Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our learning series, Navigating New Roads. Today's webinar program will be presented by Adam Levithan to discuss 3 easy ways to engage staff and manage projects from home. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping notes. Materials for today's presentation can be found in the toolbar located on the right hand of your screen. Also, at the bottom of the toolbar, you will see a question box. All questions pertaining to the webinar content will be answered at the end. We will do our best to address them or throughout. Once the webinar is over, there will be a pop-up asking you to complete a survey of today's webinar. Please take a moment to complete it. It is our way of being able to provide you with the best and most relevant programs possible. And finally, to raise the stakes a bit, at the end of each of the 7 sessions within our Navigating New Roads learning series, we will have a trivia question for you to answer. The attendee who answers the most trivia questions correctly at the end of the series will receive a special prize from our Withum team. In the event of a tie, Molly Caruso, the 2-year-old mastermind behind this operation, will make the selection. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Adam.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So my name is Adam Levithan. I am a practice manager in our Withum digital technology area, focusing on Microsoft 365 technologies. Specifically, I work with organizations to build intranets, project collaboration. Fun fact, I ride over 2,000 miles, and I do that for the image you can see here, Pan Mass Challenge, which fundraises for Dana-Farber up in Massachusetts to fight cancer, amongst other not-for-profit volunteer. And that's why I'm here. Also, why am I qualified to talk about this besides discussing remote work and being a technologist? I've been remote working for about 10 years, usually an average of 3 days a week. So it's old hat. And then I'll introduce you to Brad.
Morning, everybody, and thanks for being on. Brad Caruso, partner here at Withum, work in our not-for-profit group and have been over here for a little over 12 years. I, as well as Adam, have been working remotely to a degree. Being an auditor, we're the experts in remote work because we never are in our own office. So we had to adapt to that years ago. When I first started, we had little, the red ropes where you put paper into a bag and basically carried it around. And we've evolved all the way to now 100% of my work is pretty much in a computer, save for some work carrying over. I host our Civic Warriors podcast, which if you want a good podcast to listen to, we invite leaders in the nonprofit industry to talk about change, talk about innovation, and talk about fun things they're doing and put in a way for people to get additional exposure. I'm a dad of 2 kids. Molly Caruso is my lovely daughter, who is 2, and I have a little guy, Chase. Fun fact, I'm a volunteer firefighter, so I do believe heavily in civic duty as well as in helping your community out. And just because I get a chance to give everybody a fun fact about firefighting, while you're working remotely, you're going to be home. And I think some people are sometimes shy to call 911 because they feel embarrassed. And I will tell you that if you do have an issue, if you smell natural gas, if you see a fire, if you are not sure what's wrong, you should call 911. Fire departments are more than happy to help. And you don't always know what's wrong. Many people think they can smell carbon monoxide, but the truth is you can't smell carbon monoxide, and it's too late when you find out that you're poisoned by carbon monoxide. So just call 911, and firefighters like myself are more than happy to come out and check it out and make sure see what's wrong.
And also, just to highlight, Brad was saying you can listen to, but if you want to, in the chat or the questions, you can also volunteer to be interviewed. There's a high standard there, so it has to be a good story, but you can both listen and volunteer to be interviewed.
Perfect. So, as Adam said, we're doing our navigating, and Ashley said, we're doing our Navigating New Road series. The purpose of this, and we designed this content for the next couple weeks, to help with the challenges we're hearing from our clients. We're amazed at the resilience that we're hearing. People are shifting to the new normal. People that were historically working from an office are now working remotely and dealing with the challenges that entails. Our goal is really to provide you with relevant information and to hold learning topics to help you navigate that, hence the Navigating New Roads concept. And we're going to provide different learning activities which cover remote working, which cover electronic changes in processes, which cover cybersecurity, the CARES Act, which I'm sure many of you are dealing with. I've been living and breathing that for the last couple of weeks. And so we just wanted to come up with a few different topics that would definitely help everybody, our clients and non-clients, with dealing with and addressing the new norm to the best they can.
And on top of that, I see a question already. It's designed so there are CPE credits, correct, Brad and Ashley?
Correct.
All right. So one of the reasons we have this agenda slide. So to answer that question there, and also being thoughtful of your time and the value for everyone. So we're going to talk about the 3 easy ways, which are focusing on people, content, and data, and then also talk about security. And don't worry, it's not all bad news, but giving you some things to think about, depending on what part of the organization you're in, or to talk to your IT team, or to check yourself. So that's what we're going to be talking about this afternoon, and that's enough about us. So we want to go into a first poll. And so this poll is, what's your biggest concern about employees working from home? And so the reason that there are only 4 answers here, and we're not letting you choose all of the above, is because it's a difficult thing to choose. But Brad, you've been working with a lot of different clients. What's your quick view on the #1 issue for our clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing the most is twofold. One is ongoing productivity. It's how do we manage people remotely? How do we make sure everyone's Wi-Fi works so that our calls don't get cut off, or actually you can maintain some normalcy when you're having conversations with people. But really, the biggest thing we're seeing is just making decisions on how payroll works. Are we going to keep people on staff? Are we not? How do we maintain our payroll? We're getting a lot of questions from employees about unemployment and about maintaining their job, and really transparent communication is the one thing that we're seeing is prevailing. With them, I think we were fortunate that our CEO has just been constantly communicating with us about what's going on, not hiding any secrets, and just being very transparent about why we're making decisions and how we're going about that. So I think the maintaining productivity as well as payroll has been the most complex challenge so far.
Great, and we can close the poll. And unsurprisingly, ongoing productivity is the top one, and then staff coherence and continuing corporate culture, with a few laggards on security, which is perfectly fine. Again, no, it's a hard decision. Working with some of our clients, I've heard all of them, and it's interesting. The difference in the audits tax side versus technology. Obviously, for technology, when we talk about corporate culture, we talk about that communication that you were just mentioning. We talk about we've built, I don't want to count how many COVID-19 sites to have a central place for data, even across a few hospital organizations that were changing 5 times a day, but there had to be one place. And then that's also staff coherence, making sure everyone's talking to each other. And we're going to talk about a lot of those features here, and unsurprisingly, we'll be able to talk about ongoing productivity. And if you have any specific questions, or comments, put them in the questions so we can try to fit them in to make this yours. So just a word from our sponsor for a second. We talked about the 3 easy ways, and how we look at it when we're coming from a technical perspective is actually not towards technology. What we're really looking to do is to focus on your people, your content, and your data. And we're looking at processes, and we're trying to make the technology invisible to you. And so that's why we're talking about those 3 things today. And also, our perspective is from the Microsoft 365 realm. We're a Microsoft 365 provider. We do parts of Withum do assist with other ERP systems and other tools. We can help you with Gmail Suite also, but you'll be hearing about that throughout the session today. All right, with that said, drum roll please. Tips and tricks for working from home. So this is a lot about productivity. We're going to front load it. Hopefully you'll stay with us for the entire time that we're also going to talk more detailed about content sharing and security. But here are the tips and tricks. First of all, I mean, we're old hat at this. This presentation was started, the first week that people were working from remote home, but make sure it's clear to yourself, to everyone around you, that we understand you're working from home. There might be a dog that you can't let out because it was raining so much yesterday. There might be small children around that just don't understand what a meeting is. Actually, not so small children. My 14-year-old's the one who's been bothering me. And if you checked out my Twitter or my LinkedIn, you'll see last week I had to post a sign at the bottom of the stairs safely, so they would know not to interrupt me. But we know things will happen. So, that's just life. That is still professional. It's still fine. What are you going to do about it? So that's number one.
I was on a client call yesterday where this client was working in a closet. They have 2 young kids, and their safest place that was free from noise as well as close to their Wi-Fi router was in the closet. And I was laughing. I thought it was very comical, but I also relate to it because I have 2 young kids, and I often have to hide a little bit and find a nice quiet place so that you're having a confidential client call with your client, and all of a sudden your kid comes screaming and yelling something. So anyway.
Yeah, no, I actually experienced the opposite, where someone was taking a call because their husband is also working at home from the bedroom on the bed, and all of a sudden you see a flying 4-year-old, take a Superman leap. It was awesome from this perspective, but yeah, not. And that actually, even though we were fun and extemporaneously talking about this, it goes actually into this. And I was interrogating Brad, and Brad and his wife have a schedule. It's not a normal schedule for quote unquote working, but it has to be around their 2 young children. So make a schedule and have it clear, obviously in your own household. That's I'm not getting into that realm, but clear also to work when you're on your hours, when you're not working. Communicate, that lunchtime's not good or it's perfect, and the odd hours that you have to cover the children for your significant other, or maybe just a sanity break, and we'll talk about that for a second. And there are different ways to do that. So no matter what system you're in, these are for Microsoft. You have availability. You can put it available. You can, I love this, currently balancing work and childcare. Change the core hours they're working. You can put that in Outlook. You can put that in Microsoft Teams. You can even send people a calendar item that just shows up on their calendar as empty, but lets them know that you're not going to be available or you have different working hours. Also, notifications, you don't want to get the barrage. There's more communication different ways, through chatting, through email than maybe before. Hopefully not email, but that's what happens. So change your notifications so you can actually get work done. Not only the interruptions we're talking about, but the interruptions of work or working in this new way. So also at the end of the day, you are working and you are at home, so make there be an off, so that you can actually have home time and separate from the closet. Well, hopefully that person's not in the closet normally, but
no, this was definitely young kids,
right? Or the bedroom that you're secluding yourself to.
Yeah, I will say that the calendar is very important. I think the calendar is a super important thing. Both being transparent with your calendar, so sharing your calendar, as well as the ability to block off time, and some of that could be personal time. I will tell you that I will put personal time on my work calendar so that I know if I have to, in the morning I have breakfast with my kids, so maybe on my calendar I put from 8 to 9 I'm in a meeting, and no one needs to know that what your meeting is. You're in a meeting, people know. So it's transparency is good.
No, that's great, and you skipped the slide, but that's okay. We'll
sorry. Jumping ahead here.
Yeah, exactly. But I wanted to just talk a little bit about communicating. So this is, if people haven't seen it, Microsoft Teams, similar to Slack in some ways. You could say chatting in Facebook if you haven't used a chat like this, and forcing yourselves to communicate more in different ways than you were before. I'd highly recommend it not being an email because that's hard to see the different types of communication. But purposely communicate more, chat more, ask more questions, make sure you're present. And so these types of chat systems allow you to do that. We like the Microsoft 365 ecosystem because everything is in a security boundary. But there are a lot of great systems that allow you to do this. And Brad already said it, but we want to highlight it again, which is to set your boundaries. And this means also we've switched a lot to 25-minute and 45-minute meetings, because there's nothing worse than sitting at your chair, which you don't think of when you're at the office and you have back-to-back meetings and you just can't move and you're stuck in a position. So also not only breakfast, but schedule some breaks or schedule your meetings a little bit shorter. We'll also talk about this in more detail later, but Microsoft 365 does give you your own analytics and tells you, how much time you're working on different things. So that's really interesting to see your own data. With that said, we have poll number 2, which is asking what tools are you using to support work from home? Again, we didn't want to include too many here, but these are some of the ones that are coming up most frequently. And one of the things is there are a lot of different tools to use and to achieve similar features. We're using a best-in-class webinar solution where Teams, you could kind of do it, but not really. How many systems, Brad, have you used with your customers?
I will say all of the above here,
Yeah.
and we adapt to the ones that they use. So we use Microsoft Teams. So when we send calendar invites, we usually include the Teams link, which people can join that app on the web and participate the same way we do via video. A lot of people use Zoom. I think Zoom is one of the biggest pop-ups that people didn't always use, and now all of a sudden it's the biggest thing since sliced bread.
Right.
WebEx, Google Hangout, Skype, all the above.
And you nailed it. 84% are using Zoom, 41 on Microsoft Teams, 28 on WebEx, 22 on other. So yeah, our experiences are the same as the people who are attending here. Thank you so much for answering that.
Fun Zoom fact. I was on. I had a client send me a picture yesterday where they had a Zoom call and one of their attendees was a donkey. So you can invite you can invite fun people to your conversations, and it's easy because it's electronic. Doesn't matter where they are.
I actually saw a large company said Conan O'Brien joined their sales meeting. How they did that one, I don't know.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, but as you can see, we're going to talk a little bit about meetings, and hopefully you've noticed that we actually have our video on. So because we're not together, and in honesty, we've done this for several years. As long as you have the bandwidth and you don't have 5 people on the internet, I get shouts from my son on playing on Xbox if I can stop my work so he can have less laggy system. The answer is no. Use your video. That gives you that connection. You can see my lovely play home back there for my daughter. So, it gives you a little glimpse into the person. Now, with that said, unfortunately, we're not able to do it here, but in most systems, you're able to either do a blurred background to make some things not be seen, and also custom images in the background, especially for more formal client-to-client meetings compared to internal meetings. And then, because it's not the normal time, you want to practice inclusion and be purposeful. You want to make sure that you're inviting people into that meeting, because maybe face-to-face, they would be much more inclined to talk, or it's the same person who's not going to talk either way. But if you're leading the meeting, make sure that you're asking everyone for input, and also watch that mute button. Most systems you're able to mute people but not unmute them, and it's best practice, as we all know, to try stay muting as much as possible and then unmute when you're speaking. I've definitely been caught yammering away and then someone says, Adam, you're muted. So, you just gotta watch your screen for that. Also, something we love about the Microsoft Teams system, and a few systems are now, Zoom is actually caught up with another third-party system. You can record the meeting. So, you're in it, but you're not 100% sure, or you think you're gonna wanna review it again, ask everyone's permission and record it. And what happens is this, in Microsoft 365, this becomes another additional record. And even cooler, all right, I love this stuff, is that you can transcribe that message. So if we were recording this right now, which we are, but if we were recording it in stream and transcribing it, we'd be able to go back and look, oh, what did they say about calendar? And it would jump directly back to calendar. So that's built into your subscription for Microsoft 365, but obviously a great thing to do on any system. So we highly recommend it. Then also just a few tidbits about Microsoft Teams itself. Really fun. There's something called Whiteboard, which, you're not at the whiteboard, but it's great to draw. Yes, drawing's a little hard unless you have a touch screen, but you can do it with your mouse, I promise. And it's a great way to have interactive meetings and being able to brainstorm just like you would in person. So highly recommend using that. And then actually, you know what, Brad, you had mentioned our town hall meetings. So there is something called live events, and there are many different systems. So what was that experience like? We've had 2 or 3 town halls now.
Yeah, we've had, I think, 3 town halls now and 1 next week, where our CEO kind of gives the firm an update. They can allow questions to come in. Everyone's basically muted, but the presenter is live stream. I think the first time we did it, there was a learning lesson that you need a strong internet. You needed an internet connection that could handle it, and have to make that happen or sit closer to the Wi-Fi. But once you figure that out and it's not laggy, as Adam said, it worked out really well. And message came across, Q&A came through, and it was a very, very good way to get a message across, especially from tone at the top and leadership kind of giving a message to everybody at the same time.
Yeah, they just upped this technology-wise. It used to be 20,000 people can be on one. Now that you can have 30,000 people, so that's a major company. Yeah, exactly.
That's exciting.
Pretty crazy stuff. So just summarizing this, the tips are really focusing around that schedule, communicate, over-communicate, use video for that personal touch, keep time for yourself, whether it's on the calendar or not, set boundaries, not just time, but even physical place, as we talked about. And then we have to say, take advantage of what you own. If you're on Microsoft 365, you don't necessarily have to buy new solutions, and take advantage of the ones that are on your fingertips and you already have logins into. And then, what all of this had been is what we were talking about at the beginning, engagement across your organization. And Brad and I were talking about this. The things we talked about were really for your internal team members, certainly for your clients too. Most of this is true of face-to-face and videos. Brad, what do you think about membership organizations? What have you heard about working from home that has helped them be successful?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think in the nonprofit community that we work with, I think the membership associations are the ones that are most significantly hit by this, because a lot of their business is driven around networking, driven around being around people, and driven around that engagement or that collaboration between the members and the actual organization. And some of those organizations are forced to make tough decisions, whether that be maybe we move from having an office space to just being completely virtual because we might not need our office anymore. And, granted, people have commitments and leases and legal stuff that some of us don't always understand, but, it's important that you look at those, especially from a cost perspective, as well as from a future perspective. As much as this is a short-term, COVID-19, everyone's is the buzz this year, maybe not next year. My guess is that this is going to change culture going forward significantly. And then second to that is just moving on to, we always had this meeting on this date and this time and this place with these people. Maybe we need to change that. Maybe we need to go to a more electronic platform. Maybe we need to offer more of an electronic solution. Maybe we need to have more virtual happy hours. Several of our clients are introducing virtual happy hours, virtual hangouts, and finding different fun ways to engage with their members and others. So definitely a lot of significant change here, and without having a strong technology platform or training in that, it's hard to pull off. But you do have to get creative and kind of work with all of it in this new norm.
Yeah, and we talked about you can keep the development items alive, you can keep the communication with constituents alive, and I think that's a lot going to the next one. Social organizations, how can you reach the people you're trying to serve? How can you deliver? So what was a team meeting about a specific, maybe it's an individual, maybe it's a location, that you can turn that into a virtual conversation, securely. If that's a concern, you can do all of those items. And then what you were saying too, a lot of social organizations are trying to reduce their administration down to the minimum so they could serve the most people possible. This is a great time, we'll actually talk about more, to take a look at what is overhead. And I'm not advocating releasing anyone or anything like that, but it is certainly opening our eyes. Anything else about those social organizations?
No, you hit the nail on the head with that. I think people are definitely making decisions. I think telehealth is definitely becoming something, teleconferences, and how do we connect with our, on a social organization level or on a community-based organization level, like how do we connect with our clients, our customers, our constituents, our population that we're serving, especially when, we have clients too, which is interesting, that have grant contracts that say you need to have a face-to-face meeting. How do you justify a face-to-face meeting when you can't be face-to-face, or how do you continue to carry out your business? And a lot of that is you have to work with your funding sources, and you have to work with adopting a new methodology, and it's a challenge. It takes a lot of thought, a lot of time, a lot of meetings, a lot of practice.
Yeah, and I think for the last one, which is something, I'm located in Washington, D.C., we deal with a lot of international development organizations serving, global, it's social or membership organizations. They're probably, I guess they combine, but they're naturally distributed, but now even more so, even those local country offices, not being able to collaborate individually. So it's more about, some people here were interested in that corporate culture. They're making sure it's clear about the vision and mission is still going, and that whether the funding does continue, which most of it has continued. So it's not like their business is immediately affected. It's more how they're able to serve and how they will, refactor and wait and make decisions. So it's really that clarity to people who are always used to providing a service and want to get out there and do good, how to wait patiently and before they go ahead. And then that goes into the next topic, which is content and projects. And so here's a third poll. This is curiosity for us to what language I'll use to explain this. Again, you know that we use a lot of Microsoft Office 365, but there are great solutions out there. So just wanted to hear from people. And it looks like most people are in Office 365, so that's great. Some still on-prem, some in Google. A little bit of this and a little bit of that is usually you'll have Microsoft Office on your desktop, and then you'll use something for email, and then you'll use something for chatting, and then you'll use something for this. All is possible, and that goes into sort of easy to use for your end users and working with your clients. But thank you for filling that out. So most on Office 365, then Google, then a few on premises still, and then a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And if you want to be more specific so that I can try to answer a question, please go ahead. So what I'm going to talk about is specific to Microsoft 365, but don't worry. it applies to all the above because you can use these ideas as my files, our files as a team, and then my company's files. But there happen to be 3 different ways to do that in Microsoft 365, and I want to make sure that they're clear because the more efficiently you're storing and sharing is the more efficiently you will not waste time. And that's sort of a slight hint for the trivia question that is at the end. So stay by for that. But for OneDrive, you can think of my files. And so this is the business version. It has a view into all the files that are shared with you. You can share it with just a few people if you're editing a document, or you can share it with a bigger group and then put it somewhere else for final consumption. So you want to have your files accessible to you. For those who are still on premises, hopefully you have the ability to access your files that are hidden probably behind a network or behind a VPN. But when you're in the cloud, you no longer have to do that, and that's why Google is so great too. Then we go into Microsoft Teams. Here's the one place where the name works seamlessly. There are other places where it just doesn't make sense, but it's focused around groups, right? Teams of people. And so this is where not only you can share files and work on files together, but we talked about that chat. You can have a one-on-one chat, you can have a group conversation, or you can have a conversation to that whole team. It also provides solutions for calling either virtually over the internet or actually having phone lines attached to it. And then the final section is the classic knowledge repository, pages, intranets, and that's what helps you with your corporate culture. Where I spend a lot of my life in building intranets is SharePoint. So all these systems are together, and what they share is actually no matter where you're putting files, they're being stored in one location. However you're interacting, all of the different capabilities are available across all of the different solutions. So again, compared to a little bit this, little bit of that, you don't have to worry about settings. You don't have to worry about permissions and access. It's all the same no matter what system you're using. So that's pretty helpful and easy. Just a little dive, OneDrive you can have synchronized to your desktop, documents living in the cloud and living on your desktop, and you can share directly from there. And Microsoft has taken steps that the sharing looks and is the same from all different locations. So you can imagine you're on your desktop here, and you share, and you see the same thing as if you were sharing through the web. And you can put it to everyone in your company, or you can send it to external people and give them a specific link that no one else can access except for them. So a lot of great features there. We talked about Microsoft Teams. You can post it directly into a conversation and then actually discuss that document. So that's really nice. And so we, especially in this time, we talked about access, the easiest way, if you have Microsoft 365, even if you still have network shares, or to move your files to OneDrive, SharePoint, or Teams, and then you'll be able to access them anywhere on any device. So we're helping some customers do that rapidly right now because they can't get to all their work product. And also just a little bit of context. Most of the people on here have Microsoft 365. I am using that term specifically. I'd love to hear in the questions or chats if people have not heard of it called that way, because it actually includes now all of the cloud. So Azure is where most of the technology and power of the cloud comes for Microsoft. Then you can license together Windows 10, your operating system, plus all of Office 365, which is what the name was before, and then all of the end user tools. This is actually even a simplified diagram. So that's why we like it, is because you get all of these things. I think Brad's asked me a few Teams questions, not to put you on the spot, but now that he's using it more, wait, how do we do this?
Yeah, it's an easy software to use, but I will tell you, it's been a learning curve for me just getting to use it well. You know, it's easy to click through, but even like organization, you know, I think it took us a lot of time to figure out architecture. Like, you know, what do you call a channel? You know, who do you put in the channel? How do you operate that? How do you tag people? And even still, I have to remind people, hey, like you got to like mention me. Otherwise, I'm not going to see your message until I happen to scroll through there. But I have 50 channels, so I'm not going to scroll through it. So you know, you learn those things, and you know, Adam's been a huge help for me and our team just figuring that out. So it's been a good thing.
Yeah, and our IT team stepped up and has been doing some training sessions. We've worked with a few clients who were never using it, and in a week onboarded a few thousand people into the system, covering some of those things that Brad had mentioned. So just pat yourself on the back. You own all of this. We a lot of the time help people, you know, take advantage of it, not just working remotely, but that's a key area to why we believe Microsoft 365 is good. And then also, I love to remind people, this is fun for me, especially like, you know, if you're working on your home computer, or actually I had a client whose computer died, but luckily all their content is in Office 365. All he had to do was order a new laptop, he received it, and he logged in. Because everything is based on your login, and obviously the software you have, although you could do almost everything through a browser, and all of a sudden it shows you recommended items, recent item, pinned items, shared with me items. It knows who you are, and so even though we talked about the 3 different usual locations where you can save items, for me, for my team, for the whole organization, if you've looked at it, if you edited it, or if someone shared it with you internally or externally, it's going to show up in that file tab in PowerPoint, Word, or Excel. So everything's connected. It's great for me because I work in so many clients, but I can access, you know, my Word documents from one location. So that's a fun little tidbit. Now we'll go on to security, and we have another fun poll. And I stopped myself from saying this before, but how many passwords do you use to work from home daily? And I love that too many just went. And so we're allowed to have a little fun with these questions. So very few people are only using one. And so, you know, this question is very purposeful because the weakest link of any security is us. Our people are that password. I know organizations recently who their student accounts were hacked because all of a sudden people were going on to multiple meetings, not just one. So it wasn't just like what happened with Zoom, where people were randomly guessing numbers and joining Zoom meetings. They had to have both the team meeting and the passwords to get on them, so they'd somehow been distributed. So even one password could be a problem, but that is the best way to secure your organization. Unsurprisingly, well, actually, just by a hair, we have too many, and then 2 to 4 seems to be the majority, and some people 5 to 7. So that's certainly something we work with organizations to pare that down. And even if you don't change systems, there is a method called single sign-on where you can apply the same password to multiple different systems. So we facilitate that. But you know, I don't want to be completely negative. By default, remote work doesn't introduce more risks. It's totally you know, based on your access to, if you know, the cloud, it's basically the same security. On premises, you're using a VPN, and so it's just, again, those passwords to log into that that are the risks. And what we've seen is if you panic and you try to put new solutions in place, that's the time that well, holes in your security do come in. Yeah. And so, oh, Brad, do you want to add something?
No, that's 100% true. Yeah, it's that you have to be very mindful about the systems that you acquire, utilize, and add, and you have to understand both the technology and the security around the technology, you know, so you make sure there's no holes in it. It's a very important fact.
Yeah, and there's a fancy term in security called endpoint protection, which basically is how are you accessing your information. And this is one thing that you could check on. Lots of systems that your organizations apply are able to tell are they coming from laptops, what browser they're using, what version are they using. So the one thing you can do without introducing more risk is MDM, is mobile device management, and you can apply policies for who or where people can apply or can access the system. And depending on Microsoft's 365, there are built-in. Google, there are also some built-in solutions that you don't even have to pay additionally to it. So that's something you could change immediately about this information. And maybe you're worried about mobile phones and you remove them from being able to access information because people are home. They're not mobile. So also things that we've seen, and I think Brad, part of the series is a dedicated session on security. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I think in 3 weeks we'll be having our the security. We're bringing in our cyber expert, Matt Ferrante's team internally. So Withum Cyber is going to join and talk about how people are protecting their remote work environments. It's going to be good and highly relevant. We're lucky because we have our cyber experts on staff, so they train us. So I see a lot of the value in just the training aspect and just kind of simple tricks and things that you need to know to protect yourself.
Yeah, and what made me think about that is this first one of the COVID-19 scam. So there are people, phishing, sending emails, pretending to be government, pretending to look official, and it's not. It's people taking advantage of you and trying to grab those passwords and spoof you and steal your information. So
yeah, I sat through an entire presentation on that where they talked about FedEx, the FedEx scam right now, where you're getting a text message to change your security settings for FedEx. And hey, you don't want us to come to the front door because of COVID-19, and change your settings so that we'll just drop the package off, like not by your house. We won't come up to you. We'll know not to bother you. And it's actually someone trying to hack your phone.
Exactly.
Scary.
So that's something. Yeah. Another thing, we talked about turning on mobile device management. A lot of systems you can do dual factor authentication. You're probably really familiar with that when you're doing banking. So that just provides an extra layer that even if a fake FedEx email comes in and someone does click on that, they would only have one form of authentication, and it would, as long as they haven't stolen your phone also, then they wouldn't be able to get that second factor. So they still, even with your password, they wouldn't be able to log in. So that's pretty good. And the last two, actually, we do it with them. So we moved our systems, our one important tax and a few others, directly to the cloud, and that's desktop virtualization. So that is literally taking what you usually use on your desk or on your laptop, moving into the cloud, and you can access it anywhere. You want to share, Brad, a little bit about the experience? Although I guess there's not that much to share, right?
There's not really that much to share. It's just, I think it's become a more secure way. Like we use the dual authentication now to get into, just to access those platforms. And obviously as an accounting firm, we have to invest significantly in security and technology to prevent anyone, if someone gets into our tax software, that's a big problem. So I think just the added layer of security, and it's something where I wasn't involved with the nuts and bolts of making it happen, but at the same token, as far as, using it, you're not going to notice any difference other than it may even be a little bit faster.
I'm glad you said that, because that was part of it. And so what happens, because the way it is hosted in the cloud, literally our team can just turn on more. During this busy season, they've said, okay, put bigger servers behind it, and then when busy season slows down, they'll reduce it. So it allows you to handle the cost and the user capability all at the same time. So it's really cool technology that I know a little more about the nuts and bolts, but
and the ability to have multiple people access it at the same time. So like, if you want to have a real live conversation and edit it at the same time, we have found benefit to that too, is, hey, pull up the tax return, we'll go into here and just edit some boxes and it works. So I think that's another benefit of it. It's just when you start moving this direction, you have real-time editing.
Yeah, and we have actually worked with 2 organizations to put some of their major systems in the cloud over the last 2 weeks. because they literally didn't have access. They couldn't do work. Everyone, was capable of working remotely, but they couldn't access systems like our tax systems there. And then, one of the biggest things is about process. And I just show this slide quickly. Our typical process for sharing documents, and then we have a specific system for looking at project management when we're working with clients. Hopefully, if you're our client, you've used this, being able to see data in the background, and then having internal and it can be external conversations via Microsoft Teams. So a lot of things go through your normal process. I bring this one up because now's the time when things are stressed. What is your process like? You're going to find inefficiencies, and what do you do with it? And I like this one from Brad. It just audits continue. So how are remote audits continuing? You described how you used to never be in the office because you're on client site. Now you can't be in the office, nor can you be on the client site. So how is it all working?
Yeah, we've had to pivot, but thankfully, we like I said, we invested in technology, I think, for the last couple of years, and just that last slide kind of shows all the technologies we use in an audit process, and you can see, you as a client may work with us and say, I use email and I use this, but you don't see everything else in the background. And we probably have a solid 8 to 10 technologies that are going on at the same time, so that you can kind of get a frame of reference for. There's no one solution that helps everybody, but at the same token, all of them kind of need to work together to make it happen. So, that's how we're now moving totally virtual. And I will tell you that, interestingly enough, some clients have everything electronically and it's seamless. We've done some audits in the month of April where literally not one client visit. We've had a lot of Teams calls, a lot of Skype calls, a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of conversation, a lot of pivoting to figure out how we did the things we used to do and how we do them now. Some clients are entirely paper, and we've actually had them box things up, and we've came and picked them up. A nice safe transfer of information. Looks a little shady if you're driving up and picking up a box off someone's front step and then leaving, but that's okay. We've coordinated it, and we make sure that we're safe and not exposing anybody in this environment. But we've had to pivot, and I will tell you, you and your business, you're going to have to pivot, and you're going to have to find a new and a better process and a better way of doing it. Is it ideal? No, but at the same token, our goal is to really just provide the same level of service, if not a higher level of service than before. So it works, but yeah, interesting. Definitely interesting changes over the last month.
Yeah, and I think what we've learned too, and we've assisted some people turning some of those Excel sheets into dashboards, into digital dashboards. This is something you can do in Microsoft and Power BI and a lot of other good systems. And what this helps is typically you might have had that conversation in person, and it's just really hard to point at a row and be able to have the conversation, where now with all of the information in front of you, you're able to skip that meeting and start at the end. So we're talking about process, and we'll talk a little bit about using your data in a second. But this is an opportunity to transform that data that you're already gathering, but take less time. Spend a little upfront, spend time deciding on what it looks like, but then the gathering and discussion gets smaller and smaller. So it's more of those efficiencies. Also, just a cool fact, some people find it scary, some people find it cool, depending on your perspective, but in the back end, Microsoft does, I said before that when you're, it can show you what your meetings are. So here it's also gathering information about people logging in, how your files have grown, utilization, and this is in almost any system. So recommend when you go into a system and you're we talked about productivity being the #1 issue. This isn't the end all be all, but you can see from a company-wide perspective about who's using the systems that they now have to use. So that's a really great indicator. And then in Microsoft, they also, this goes into artificial intelligence. So my analytics is showing you your focus time. So if you're in a meeting, but you're typing and sending emails, it might say that you're not focused. It might say who you're working with. And then there is actually a workplace analytics being released. So this is not individuals, but it shows sort of the health of the organization. It could go down to like a department level. Does this sound like Big Brother? Kind of, but I want to remind you, one of the biggest differences between Microsoft and other organizations is this data is never used for advertising, where honestly, Google is. So the information they use for Google, and my best example of this is my kids are actually Google Classroom, which is awesome. But when it first got kicked off, in their email, they were being advertised too. Not bueno. That was not cool.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so in education. So all the data Google's gathering for you, they could use. Now, they might not, but they could, where Microsoft will never. It's only internal to the system, and it's about productivity. So again, this is ways that you can see how people are being productive. Is it perfect? Of course not, but gives you a glimpse, of course, yourself. And then, this is actually one of our last slides. So if you have questions, please start typing them in now or running to the end. We wanted to focus on making decisions. And I think, Brad, you had talked about one organization quickly realizing their investment in space. So how did they come up with that decision?
Yeah, and so I've had a lot of clients approach me lately and talk through with me about the thought process of how do we make it happen that we're not no longer in the office. And a lot of that because rent's expensive, and depending on how long this crisis lasts, it could last forever, it could last a month, it could last a day. I think many of us don't know, but I think a lot of people are realizing that we actually can do our jobs remotely, and we actually can execute the same way we used to. Some like it better than others, but the reality is that it may become more of an important part of our daily work life. And so I think many clients are starting to postulate and really put in thought on, well, how do I make that happen? How do I, can I not re-up my lease and move into a virtual workplace? And I think the answer is yes, caveated with, you have to look at every process you do, you have to look at every granular activity you do, and you have to really strategically understand how this is going to change our business. Does it mean that we have to hire a different workforce? Does it mean that we have to change our technology? Does it mean we have to pivot our process? My experience implementing technology for the firm has always been, you need to have a champion that drives the usage and drives the implementation. Otherwise, people always divert back to what they always do. We throw Microsoft Teams to our firm of 1,200 people, and I will tell you that a lot of people adopted it, and a lot of people still email people religiously and just keep firing email. Whereas, I think those that have adopted it and have someone champion it, or let's say I'm the partner on a job and I have a team. If I push my team, listen, do not email me. If I get an email, I will not respond to it. I will only respond to Microsoft Teams under the project client X. I will tell you that's how you drive change. And so, in order to operate and make those decisions and make that happen, it's both a strategic and a tactical. It's a strategic decision and a very tactical implementation. So you have to be just very conscious of how you make that happen. And to be honest, now's the time to start thinking about it. Have those brainstorming meetings, have risk meetings with your board to start talking about, where do we want to be in 5 years, and does this event change who we are and what we do? And it probably won't change who you are, but it probably will change what you do. So it's good to think about.
You have to be careful that it doesn't change who you do. And when you have those conversations, being very little, you want to gather data, right, to make those decisions. And I think, productivity is the key. If you see productivity being the same, and you can compare it to the work hours that people are doing and conversations, create an employee survey to not just get hard facts, but how people are feeling about it, how people will feel about it. And then you can, make a decision for the quote unquote new normal, whatever that means for you. So use this time to collect data. Don't, we're now looking with organizations on recovery, being competitive. Actually, it's my last bullet here. Take advantage of the time. It is panic-ridden and anxiety-ridden, and looking for keeping everyone on the payroll. I understand that, but a small part can be gathering that data to make the right decision for the future. So a few key takeaways, make sure you have a good workspace so you feel comfortable, communicate often, healthy boundaries, acknowledge to everyone and anyone that working from home is close to working from work, but not completely. Increase your full organization communication, use videos, town hall meetings like we described. Not too late to move to the cloud. Organizations like ourselves can help you do it the right way very quickly to give everyone that productivity you're looking for. I sort of joked, but I mean, you can work with your tax and audit supplier and you can continue. I love that slide about here's how we collect information if it's not online, because we're doing it and we're keeping moving. This is not a time that that items can stop. And yes, I understand it was pushed down 90 days, but that's still not that much time for returns and audits. So, everything can continue. You have this slide already, just some resources. And we want to get to the trivia question. So the trivia question, so if you join us for more sessions, we are asking, and I hinted at this, I didn't give the answer though, but how much time is lost per week searching for or recreating content? So for your organizations, if you're professional services, serving clients, if you're the development organizations, even if you're membership organizations and you're trying to send the right person that right piece of information, you are probably have searched for items. And I'm not going to tell you the answer until the end. We have 28% looking for 8 to 12 hours. Less than 4 hours is the minimum. I like that. Actually, the minimum is more than 12 hours. All right, we'll wait 30 more seconds. We need, I think, 80% to answer. Or is it 100% for? But that is our session. And thank you so much. And actually, I will tell you, you are correct. It's 4 to 8 hours a week wasted. So that's also where these systems can facilitate assisting, your productivity. That's not even remote working. That's working from your office. If you'd like, in the slides that you received, you can learn more about us. You can email me directly at alevithan@withum.com or Brad to get us to talk about remote working or remote auditing and tax. We appreciate you staying, and there are no questions, and we've hit time. So thanks a lot. Have a great weekend.
Take care. Stay safe out there.